and welcome to the University of New Hampshire here in Manchester. My name is Mike Hickey, and I'm the interim dean at UNH Manchester. As most of you know, this is one of 7 colleges of the University of New Hampshire. We just happen to be based here in Manchester, so we're distinctly urban, and we cater to commuter students. About 90, almost 100% of our students either work full or part-time in the general Manchester area, and they come to school here, mornings, evenings, and in afternoons.
How long this used to be a mill?
This used to be the Pandora Mill, and as a matter of fact, we moved into this location just this past March during spring break.
Oh, nice.
It took 51 weeks from the time we first started talking about it until our design and build out and move-in took place, just 51 weeks. And we moved in during spring break, and we came in under budget too, which is great. It's really a pleasure for me to be here, and I will have to excuse myself in a few minutes to introduce the governor. We just met in the hallway, and I've watched Governor Gilmore as a governor and as a leader who's been very interested and has taken a leadership role in national security over a period of years. Really appreciate your focus on this area, Governor, and I want to thank you for your service to not only the state of Virginia, but to our country, for your time in the Army. Thank you as well for your tenure at the RNC and your leadership there. And want to make sure that you feel at home here on our campus, and would invite you back anytime to take a tour. I won't take up any more time except to say we're delighted to be hosting this, delighted to have Americans for Peace, Prosperity, and Security as a partner, so thank you for working with us on this front. And it's my pleasure to introduce Hillary Seeger to Seeger, yes, to make the next introduction, okay?
Fabulous.
So Governor,
But Cigaro might be interesting.
Cigar. That goes with the whole Sicilian thing.
Okay, thank you. Very good.
Thank you very much. So, well, good afternoon. Hi, how are you, Governor?
Hillary.
Nice to see you. I am Hillary Seeger. I'm board member of Americans for Peace, Prosperity, and Security, APPS for short, and I'm pleased to welcome you to our 5th New Hampshire National Security Forum. We are actually focusing and working to raise the level of debate over foreign policy and national security issues, which to me is paramount. If we're not secure, all other issues go by the wayside, as far as I'm concerned, and I think that a lot of my fellow board members and fellow veterans feel the same way. Before we get started, I really want to take a moment to recognize a few groups. Without them, we wouldn't have been able to do any of these forums. UNH, the UNH rep, the University of New Hampshire for agreeing to host this forum, and the professionalism of their team as always. It's just been fabulous. So let's talk about our special guest today. Jim Gilmore was the governor of Virginia from 1998 to 2002, and that was a critical period in our nation's history, as I'm sure you all remember. He's done a few things. His election ushered in the first complete GOP control of the executive branch of the Virginia state government, and his legacy of 2 decades of public service is highlighted by significant policy work on major issues of taxation, homeland security, and a determined focus to bring people together from different beliefs and backgrounds. But there are a couple of things that may not be in here that I'll say about Governor Gilmore. Governor Gilmore is a veteran. He speaks 2 languages. He was on President Bush's, now correct me if I say this wrong, the National Security Advisory Board in the aftermath of 9/11.
And I will define that in my remarks, yes.
And actually was in one of the states that had a significant terror attack on its soil. He knows firsthand, and I get chilled by this, goosebumps. He knows firsthand what we're up against by being there on the front lines as it was happening here on our soil. And I am very, very, very proud to be able to introduce him and to introduce our moderator today, a former Marine combat pilot and state representative, John Cebowski. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to you, you fine gentlemen, and I thank you so much for coming up here today, and both of you for your service to our country as well.
Thank you, Hillary, that's nice, thank you.
Thank you. Governor, welcome. Well, I'm sure we've got a lot of great questions in the room. I came armed with a couple just in case it bogs down, but I don't think that's going to happen. So what I'd like to do is just kind of keep the questions moving. We only have an hour, and I'd like to kind of make sure that everyone gets a chance. So I'll kind of go around the room, no special order or anything. But I would like to give everybody an opportunity to ask the governor a question. So I know you all came here to ask your question. So why don't we start with someone in the audience who has a question for the governor? Does anyone have one they'd like to step forward first? Hillary.
Mr. Cebowski, if you wouldn't mind, Governor, did you have an intro that maybe you could give us a little bit of background before we started asking questions?
Why don't I go ahead and open for about 10 minutes and then take all the Q&A that you all would like to do. And I'll do it that way. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and to maybe introduce things a little bit. And I'm going to try to hold this so that I'm timely. First of all, I just filed at 11 o'clock for the presidency in the State House over here, which was great. And in doing so, with the reporters, which there was a gaggle of them, I'm pleased to say, I did have an opportunity to stress not only my background as a United States Army veteran, but also the concerns that I have on some national security issues. But this, of course, is a nice little forum, and I'm really enjoying the opportunity to speak with my friends about this and people that I'm meeting for the first time. This is an area of lifelong interest for me, lifelong professionalism and expertise. And I've lived with this my whole life, and I'm fortunate enough to have some experience with it. First of all, my degree, Mike, from the University of Virginia, is in Foreign Affairs, Soviet area studies. And after that, I joined the United States Army and had an opportunity to be trained as a soldier and then trained as an intelligence agent and trained in the German language and then finally sent to Europe during the Cold War as an intelligence agent and really traveled through Europe doing intelligence work there. After law school, I was elected ultimately to be the Commonwealth's attorney, the chief prosecutor, the attorney general, and the governor, and chaired a couple of important national commissions, and was asked by President Bush to chair the Board of Visitors of the United States Air Force Academy, which I did for 3 years, during the time that academy was under attack for a variety of different things, racial discrimination, sex discrimination, all the rest of it. And I managed to preserve the integrity and the reputation of the academy, I think, pretty well together with the other board members. The most important credential, as Hillary indicated, was when I was appointed. Actually, it was actually Hillary in the beginning through the Clinton administration. As a matter of fact, in 1999, they came to me as governor of Virginia and asked me to chair the National Advisory Panel on terrorism and weapons of mass destruction. The reason that commission was established was because there was this creepy feeling in the Congress that we were under control. But they didn't, and they were afraid that there might be actually a nuclear or biological attack on the United States, and they wanted us to assess the risk. So working with RAND Corporation, we did that panel for 3 years. And we concluded that the chances of a nuclear, biological, or chemical attack on the United States were not very likely. But we also suggested that a conventional attack, using an explosive of some kind, a weapon of some kind, was almost certain for the United States, and that there's something had to be done to prepare the United States. I'm not going to dwell on this much longer, John, but at the end of 3 years, after the Congress pretty much ignored our reports, the 9/11 attack occurred. And I was governor during that 9/11 attack, and as Hillary said, I was the governor of the second state attack that day, because the Pentagon's in Virginia, it's not in Washington. So the Arlington and Fairfax and Alexandria and eventually the Maryland people came over and defended and dealt with that fire. But as the chief executive, I had to calm the people of Virginia, visit the people in the hospital, make sure the resources were pouring into that event, and ultimately dealing with the economic aftermath. So that is the kind of background that I bring to this issue. And to speechify for just a moment, I don't think a lot of the other candidates have this kind of background. You can look at them and see, and there's just not a lot of executive experience or foreign policy experience in combination. So that's why I'm running, because I think I can offer that kind of experience and credibility into the national security area, which is a tremendous significance and importance. So let me say a few things. I'm also president and CEO of a nonprofit, non-political operation called the Free Congress Foundation, and I don't campaign through that. We just finished a seminar at Free Congress Foundation on what might be a new foreign policy for the United States. And not to dwell on this too long either, or anything else for that matter, but the problem that we've been facing is that we've had a policy that basically we call the neocon policy, with very quick to intervene, particularly militarily, and to get into places that frankly begin to dissipate our power. There's a principle of dissipation of power. If you go someplace where you may be at risk and you probably shouldn't go and stay. The neocons, I think, went too far too fast and got us into a lot of trouble. And part of that trouble is that there was a reaction in the United States against it. So as a result, today we have a pullback isolationist type of policy that is drawing Corinth back and sending a message to the world that America's done and that we're finished and we're withdrawing from the world. The result of that, if this continues, is a likely world war. Because every lesson we've ever had from history is isolationist pullback by the United States destabilizes the world. So, very quickly, what would my remarks be? We have several crises that we have to deal with right now. One is the emergence of Iran in the Middle East, highly destabilizing. They have taken the position they want through the Shiite religious faith to dominate what is going on. There's going to be a reaction to that. There already is. Then you've got this wild card over there of ISIS, which is a medieval barbaric type of operation. Very, very dangerous. And projecting out philosophy of savagery and barbarism that simply cannot be permitted in the 21st century. Simply cannot be. But you see this problem of Iran emerging. We've entered into a treaty agreement right now, which really wasn't a treaty. It was submitted to the Congress, this agreement. The agreement itself is risky. It doesn't reassure really that the Iranians aren't going to create a nuclear bomb. And in fact, if anything, up the road kind of certifies the ability they can get a nuclear bomb. Very, very dangerous, because that means that the Turks, the Saudis, the Jordanians, the Emirates, the Egyptians have to begin to respond to that. Today, not up the road. Meanwhile, they submitted this thing to the Congress under something called the Corker Amendment, Senator Corker from Tennessee, and instead of the president having to submit this for the senatorial constitutional approval of 2/3, they turned it on its head. And the Republicans had to put forward a proposal to eliminate the deal. Well, that means they had to get a majority to pass it. And oh no, not really. They had to get 60 votes to cut off debate in the Senate. Oh no, if it got that far and the president vetoed it, they had to get 2/3 to override it. So it was hopeless from the beginning to ever really scrutinize this deal. And it remains to be seen what happens. But I know one thing's for sure. This is an open wound and issue. And if we put an amateur in the White House now, we are in serious trouble. And by the way, all 4 of the senators running for president against me at this point voted for that Corker Amendment. All 4 of them. Cruz, Paul, Graham. Cruz, Paul, Graham, who's else? Rubio. All 4 of them voted for it. So, I'm not interested in hearing them talk about how tough they are on the president. They went along with that. Now, the second problem that I see, John, is the overarching problem of the problem of terrorism. This is very dangerous. This is like an international guerrilla war because of the dissolution of the Middle East. Very, very dangerous situation. And I say this: we have got to be prepared now, as a Western civilization, to fight the radical Islamist interpretation of the Muslim faith. Because ISIS is an example, but they're not the only ones. The Iranians have problems too, and other people do. The Saudis are no to be cute. They're no princes of it. It's very, very bad over there, and this is a very barbaric culture, and we have to assert Western values. We have to defeat this as an ideology, or they will be bringing people from all across the world to fight on their behalf in the Middle East, and we're going to have to kill a lot of people in order to deal with this issue going along. So we have to be thinking about how we can condemn this and express the morality and the values of American society. Third, we have to recognize that this constant pullback and this constant starvation of the United States military is creating a very dangerous situation. We have a sequester cap on the military budget. I believe that you're wearing a button that says eliminate the sequester. It has to come off. You have to have strong presidential leadership. The sequester cap has to come off the defense budget. We have to rebuild the Navy. We have to add more surface ships in order to carry out our worldwide mission, not to protect other people, but to protect ourselves. And we have to rebuild the United States Army, which has been dissipated. We have to add a new combat brigade to the Marines, where they're lacking right now one combat brigade. Not to go to war, but to keep peace. And finally, the last point I'll make is that you can't do any of this in today's economic conditions. We have a deliberate, slow growth policy in this country. Now, I don't care what anybody says. We're not growing at the pace that we need to grow to even capture what we lost during the Great Recession, much less build up to the point where we have the money to do the things that I've set out to do, which is an international crisis facing this country. Which means that we have to have an affirmative mission policy to grow this economy. And I know how to do that. I've got a program to do it. It's all set out. It's all published. I'm prepared to defend it. And it is a policy of eliminating the bad taxes so we create investment, stopping the overregulation, which is stopping businesses from growing, and an affirmative tax program, which I've designed, which actually will create investment and grow the economy, really do it. And if you do that, and you control your spending, you can begin to create a gap on the positive side, which will create some money in order to pay down the debt and to finance the national security of this country. But that's what I'm running for president for, and that's why I'm doing this. And this is an area where if we put a rank amateur in the White House, and I believe most of them are, and you can, Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, but she doesn't have any policy like this. I can tell you that right now.
She have any?
She doesn't have a policy that will address these issues, that's to be sure. And neither do most of the Republicans. Most Republicans don't have frankly, any knowledge or experience in this area, frankly. But even if they did, they wouldn't have, I think, a strong, solid policy that I think is going to be necessary to carry out the mission of the United States. So, John, that's my little speech, and I appreciate the opportunity to say something about this.
That's a great opening.
I'll be happy to answer.
All right, I'm sure that fueled some questions. Yes, sir. In your name, please.
Yeah, Paul Cebowski, and I'm with the VFW. We have a boiling cauldron right now going on in Syria and Iraq with ISIS, as you've mentioned. But now, welcome Putin and the Russians in there. And we hear from our own government they don't know what to do, but they're considering putting some land troops in there, ground troops in there, and also creating a no-fly zone. How do you see that working out? What do you think might be happening? I know you can't tell us exactly what Obama and his administration would do. What do you think can happen given the current circumstances?
We are now very late. Now that the Russians have entered the picture, it is exceedingly dangerous situation as of right now. Look, my evaluation is that we have, to come back to this point, and I'll try to be specific. The reason we are where we are is because America has sent constant signals over the past 8 years that we're pulling back and we're not serious. We've taken that position, and not just on the Syrian issue, but globally. That's why it's so dangerous right now, worldwide, and what we're doing. As everybody, or at least many of the military people here know, the policy of this country has always been to be able and willing to fight two wars simultaneously if we had to. Two different regions, two different wars. if we had to. We have diminished the budget so far down now that it went from 2 to 1.5, and now we're at 1. We are now equipped to fight one war on one region at any point in time because of the diminution of the American military. This is exceedingly dangerous. Is it any wonder we're now challenged by 4 different conflicts in different parts of the world? That's why we are, because the enemy, the adversaries understand that we are in that kind of position right now, and that's where we are. With respect to, look, no-fly zone, oh yeah? Well, the Russians have put a small number of their very best fighters in there, and then a small number of their second-tier fighters in there. And they're daring us to do this. So if we put in a no-fly zone, who's no-flying? This is exceedingly dangerous because what we're inviting now is a direct military conflict between a Russian regular military and American regular military, which cannot happen. We just simply can't get into that kind of situation. We are very late to this party with respect to air power. Yes, we're putting 50 special forces people in there. Frankly, I'm wondering if they're not exactly what I was when I was in Europe, which is the tripwire. They're going to embed them probably with some of the free Syrian forces over there. And then dare the Russians to shoot us. Because their stakes are very high too. They don't want to be shooting Americans. So, but the problem is very, very delicate right now, militarily. Well, my view is this. I'll give you 2 ideas, Paul, and first of all, ISIS must be defeated, but they're almost a sideshow in this particular battle. This battle is with the Free Syrian Army people who are the targets of the Russian attacks, not so much ISIS, and the government of Assad. And the policy of the United States is Assad must go. The policy of the Russians is Assad must stay, and he's the government. So we are invited in legally to defend him because he's the government of Syria. If the United States remains in the position that Assad must go as our strategic objective, then it seems to me that we're going to have to recognize another government over there so that we can say we're legitimate. And again, you're continuing to ratchet up the civil war there with great power conflict, which is highly delicate. What I would have proposed, I think I'm the only person that's proposed this because of my NATO experience, I think we need to build a new NATO in the Middle East so that you begin to pull together these key people, the Saudis, the Jordanians, the Egyptians, the Emirates, and Turkey, which is the pivot of this whole thing. Turkey is the pivot of this whole thing. Put them together in a new Middle East NATO. It doesn't have to be on the same terms as the Europeans, but we have to begin to do something to restrain the Iranians, ISIS, and now, sadly enough, the Russian influence that's there.
Seems to me, Governor, that this is really an optics play, a pure optics play on the part of President Obama, a defensive measure for the press, for the consumption of a good part of the American public. Because as you and I know, 50 people are nothing. They are absolutely nothing. That's not going anywhere. So your website, gilmoreforamerica.org, covers this pretty clearly. And if anyone here in the room hasn't visited that, we certainly recommend it because you do that. Are there any other specific steps that you think we should take over there or that you would take?
Well, first of all, the 50 people they're putting in there is not an effective military force. We all agree with that. I don't think that's what they're there for, though. I think they're there in order to begin to assert, well, ostensibly they're there to train other people. But I really wonder whether they're there to provide some backbone, if you will.
You have to wonder how many of them are intelligence folks, and I would hope a large number.
Well, I don't think they are. I think they're special forces, which is even better. But I really think they're there to begin to put the brakes on the Russians and to say, wait a minute, there may be Americans in the field if you keep shooting, and we're not going to like that. So they have risk too. We're not the only ones at risk here. They have greater risk than we do, and they're playing a much more dangerous game than we are because, we're the ones with a $15 trillion economy, and we still have the best military and the best and the strongest military in the world. So they're playing a little bit of a bluff game, I think. But it is a very serious matter when you have all those nukes flying around.
Another question for the governor and from anyone. Yes, sir.
Hey, Governor. You mentioned that sequester is limiting the defense budget, and we also have this paradigm where mandatory spending is taking over the budget itself, so it's shrinking discretionary. I wonder what policy changes you'd make to make the investments you recommend and sort of bring back that growth in discretionary spending.
The direct answer is you have to control the growth of the entitlement programs. I do not propose eliminating them or cutting them or frightening people who have come to depend on them, but I think you have to control growth. The push is the other way. The push right now under Obamacare is to grow these programs, specifically Medicaid, and that has to be resisted because if this continues to grow and to grow and to grow, then at that point the discretionary spending disappears, and that's where the military is being financed, and national security of the country is being financed. But the answer is to hold that to reasonable growth and then to get your economy up. Get more people employed, higher wages, higher wealth creation, higher productivity, really get the economy going. There isn't any other solution to this that I can find anywhere other than cutting spending to death.
Governor, you kind of opened the door there.
And that creates that gap, which creates the wealth in order to be able to answer these questions you've got. I'm
You
sorry.
kind of opened the door there with your comment about your growth code,
Yeah.
which is well articulated on the website. Perhaps everybody would appreciate if you could summarize that, because it does have an effect on what you're.
Yes, in 2010, when I went to Free Congress Foundation, which I repeat is not political, it's 501c3, so the IRS is watching me all the time on that. But I basically set out to develop a program to grow the economy because I thought that was the real challenge facing the country. So I got to some economists and we figured it out. The answer is, the program we said is, you reform personal income tax to 10, 15, and 25%. Make sure that those numbers are set so people get a tax cut. And you begin to build some sense of fairness and some sense of wealth creation by the reform of the personal tax code. You take all commercial activity, whether small, large, no more pass-throughs, no more big business, combine it all together and charge it 15%. That's an innovation that nobody else is really talking about. And you have to eliminate a lot of the special deductions and special interest group exemptions and things like that, but you basically you get business activity at that point into a 15% number. And the third is get rid of the estate tax. There are a couple of other tweaks too, bringing back overseas investment with no further tax, the ability to write off investments in the first year, not over an extended period of time. You correct some of the bad policies that have been put into place and put that in place, and the economists tell me we'll grow at that point up above 4% a year, closer to 5%. That's how you get the money in order to respond to your question. At that point, you begin to create so many people working. By the way, labor participation in this country is at a low, historic low right now. Right? We need to get it up. You get more people working in this country. More people working full-time. 9 million Americans are working part-time that want to work full-time. Get more people working full-time. Get more wealth being created. More entrepreneurs creating. And we can't have that. And that's why she can't be the president. And frankly, Bernie, I think Bernie Sanders did us all a favor. Because he tore away the veil and said, no, this is really what we are here. And that's a positive thing. So.
Who else? Carl.
Governor, we had a nice interview on Saturday, and you touched a little bit on how you plan on making the government smaller and operating more effectively. Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Well, I was tentative with you then as I am now. What I think we need to do is to really go in and look at the government and see where the money is being spent. But the money is being spent pursuant to policy right now. I mean, we've set down certain policies to make the government as big as it is. But there are some savings that could be made. We really don't know that the Department of Education is really using its money to increase education. Not really. So we might be able to look at that. The Environmental Protection Agency is not spending money, but they are preventing anybody else from doing anything by their overregulation. And there's nothing wrong with clean air and clean water, I'm for that. But they are taking this in a semi-religious type of way. And what they're doing is impeding the ability to grow the economy in any significant way. So that's a second approach that we might be able to take. There are other things as well within the economic program. Dodd-Frank at this point is wrecking the banks and wrecking the ability to finance. And it falls hardest on community banking, the opposite, to stop growth in this country. And they are succeeding rather well.
Thank you. Next question. Yes, sir.
I know it's maybe a dead horse, been around so long, being beaten around the VA issue. It seems to me, all the changes and what's been done are Band-Aids. And the system still doesn't really work. Some places it works well, other places it doesn't work at all. And you got to mix. What's your plan to fix it?
Yeah, and I will tell you, but also would love to hear your views either now or sometime in the future, because I need to know more about
Well,
this.
I personally think the answer to, and the long-term answer is give the veteran from day one choice. Let them go wherever they want to go for their health care, whether it's private facilities or a VA hospital with their VA card, no special card, just their VA card, and get their health care. I think that's the simple solution to the problem. You know, the system spends billions, you know, on facilities alone. If that money was put to the healthcare instead of putting it in the building, I think we get more bang for our buck. Really?
It is very expensive. We have McGuire Hospital in Richmond that's been a world-renowned
Yeah.
hospital.
There's some very good ones.
Yeah, but McGuire doesn't answer the problem
Yeah.
of veterans who are residing in rural areas where they can't get to the VA hospital
Yeah.
facilities, and there has to be an answer to that. And clearly having access
I mean,
to other communities.
Like now they have the choice card.
Right.
Well, you gotta wait 30 days. Why should you have to wait 30 days?
And we know that the
I
horrible
agree with you.
statistics of people not being able to get the care that they
It
need.
should be from day one, you should be able to go somewhere.
And two more points that I would make. That, I think, is the central point, but the other 2 points I would make is that we're not addressing what we're now recognizing as PTSD, the post-traumatic stress disorder. We have not focused on that. And most of the professional positions in the VA for that type of mental health care are vacant. And you know why? We know why, because the people that are trained in this don't want to go live in the places where the veterans are. So we're going to have to offer higher wages and more incentives to get people to do that so that that care is available. And then the second problem is, frankly, if I become the president, I'm going to require real hands-on management here. We just can't keep having people take the Fifth Amendment because they say that because of the assertion they're doing the wrong thing, or people who are mismanaging the place. That can't happen. And frankly, one of the duties of a chief executive, because I know this as a governor, is you've got to make sure that the agencies and the organizations are running correctly. You have to do that. And you ought to hold people accountable. So the president isn't just a speech maker or pontificator. The president's got to actually make sure that the place runs. Something that, by the way, a governor or a former governor understands.
Yes, sir.
Except Christie. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
Tony, to answer part of the question he gets at, this gentleman here, is public sector unions, was created by a stroke of a pen by FDR and are absolutely killing our government. And I think because of all the privileges they have, they can't fire them. The VA has been trying to get rid of some dead weight there, and they just can't do it. Anyway, public sector unions, I think, are one of the areas that need to be reformed. They have to take away their privileges, eliminate them.
And they ought to be against the law, because public employees have a higher leverage, particularly fire and police and so on, anybody really, they have a high leverage if they strike. And the essence of unionization is the ability to strike. If they strike, they disrupt the government for which they're serving. And I think that the recognition in many states is that that's too much leverage and it's illegal. Now, I will say this, my confession of the day, going around is, I was actually very good at public employees. When I was the governor, I considered myself a steward of public employees because they were doing good service to the people of my state. So what am I gonna do? Be say they're ugly people or horrible people? I wasn't gonna do that. And I actually became a spokesman for the legislature to protect the public employees and to make sure they were properly compensated, because I wanted to keep them, and I wanted to keep them happy and have a sense of pride and professionalism in serving the public. So I think that is the kind of approach that's better than being held at the point of a gun by a public employee union.
Hillary, you got your hand?
I do.
How we're gonna handle education. The Department of Education is basically a grant program in order to direct the states to do things in a particular way. That is a wrong way to handle education. Education has to be handled at the state, at the local level, supported by the states. And Common Core education focused on by the federal government has no place in America and should not be supported in any way.
Governor, you make a great point that caught my attention on the website when you talk about rescinding many, if not all, of President Obama's executive orders. Which ones do you find to be the most egregious, particularly from a foreign policy or security perspective? Are there any that really have grabbed your attention that would be your priorities to reverse? Did anything jump out?
Yeah, I hope I didn't say on the webpage that we were gonna reverse all of them.
No, you didn't say, you didn't say that.
Because I actually don't know what they all are. And so the first thing you gotta do when you become president is say, okay, let's look at all of them and see what they are, and which ones are serving an appropriate purpose and which ones aren't, and then get rid of the ones that aren't. The one example that I know of is that the president basically said that we would not be deporting anybody who was here illegally. That executive order is illegal and should not stand.
Okay.
Now, I'm not interested in tracking down 12 million people and putting them on boxcars. I'm not interested in doing that. But that's not the question. The question is an executive order legal to conduct that kind of activity? And it is not. So it has to be rescinded. We have to go back to where the law is passed by the Congress and obey that law and not try to make law through executive orders. Now, there's a proper place for executive orders. It's the correct management and supervision of the government appropriately through the executive branch. But I think that the president simply cannot establish a position that if he really needs to do something, the Congress won't do it, he'll just do it. That's very bad. We all know that.
In the same vein, and when you talk about business in your growth code, are there any EPA regulations that strike you as particularly egregious that are inhibiting the economy of growth? Anything jump out at you there?
I think that the clean air rules are so strenuous at this point that it's making it impossible, particularly for energy companies, to do any sort of business. And what is going on right now in America, we're in the catbird seat. Don't y'all feel better about things? Because we've got all this energy that we're creating, right? Now, I gotta admit that what's going on is that our adversaries overseas are trying to stop that development by, frankly, this keeping the prices low, and thank you very much. I'm very grateful at the pump, but that's what's going on, particularly in Oklahoma and Dakotas right now. Well, bottom line is, look, let's just remember that regulation has to be seriously justified appropriately, otherwise it becomes a drag on growth and development of the economy. So they have to be evaluated. And right now, the regulations on energy companies, I think, are stopping the growth of this essential national security asset that we have.
There's a couple of people here we haven't heard from in the room yet.
You had an interview.
But you gotta ask me only friendly questions.
Yeah, friendly question. We had an interview today with a whole bunch of reporters. Can you give us can you tell them about what happened today and what you saw and what you heard?
Well, it was great fun. It was great fun because we found out last night that because the Secret Service called her. I'm just a guy, right? I'm just running. I'm just running for president, right? But the Secret Service has been supervising Hillary Clinton, and so they said, well, she's going to announce tomorrow, so it's going to be kind of exciting, kind of sporty out there. And I said, okay. And so we went to the place, and they had all kinds of regulations on the roads and the building and all that. But one little benefit was that all the press got in there and they wouldn't let them go. So, right, so, you know, I filed with the Secretary of State at 11 o'clock, and they marched me around the corner to this room, it's full of cameras that are waiting for her an hour and a half later. Guess who showed up? Right? Guess who's coming to dinner? Gilmore, right? So I sat down, and they were very attentive. They didn't have anything to do, so they were happy to see me, and I'm a legitimate Republican candidate. You know, I'm not some yahoo out there. I was the former governor of real estates, and so it was quite successful, I thought, Sam. And they were very, you know, probing, but you know, they asked me, you know, about the Ben Carson, and I didn't really comment much on Ben Carson other than to say that all we really knew about him was what he'd been written in his books. So if the press wanted to probe him about that, I thought they had a right to do that. And I frankly, I've been around this business for years and years. If the press wants to, you know, scream at me, it's okay. You know, or yell at me or ask me ugly questions or anything. You understand, that sort of goes with the territory. But the principal point I think that Sam's trying to get at is that I was able to deliver the message. And the message is three things. One, a robust economy that addresses the anxieties of the people of New Hampshire. Secondly, heroin. And I told them this. I said, I didn't come up here to talk about this. I came up here to talk about job security and opportunities, particularly for young people, and national security. It's people in New Hampshire that talked to me about heroin. And I told them exactly what my policy was, and I told them that while I'm okay with treatment in appropriate cases, that what I'm really focused on is, in addition to that, what I'm focused on is drug dealing. And I made the strongest possible case that people who make money on the destruction and enslavement of their fellow man through the selling of heroin is not tolerable, and these people will be prosecuted to the highest extent of the law if I become the president. I understand a lot of it's state. I used to run a multi-jurisdictional grand jury. I understand that. That's okay. If the president sets a national policy down, it's going to encourage the states to do the right thing. And I pointed out that the president is doing the opposite. Just let people go. What is he thinking about? So, you know, you're sending the wrong message right now and encouraging people to deal in drugs and to use drugs, and it's destructive. It's terribly destructive. And what else do we talk about? We talk about national security issues and the need to you know, build up the military and to have strong, decisive presidential leadership. So it was fun. It was an opportunity to do that. And just Sam, did they ask me? They tried to trip me up a couple
It
times.
did.
I tried to
Asking you questions like, what did you do wrong in your life?
That was a long answer.
Governor, I think I already got an answer to one of the things I'm gonna bring up here real quickly. But as well as being a member of APS here in New Hampshire on the board, I also serve on Veterans for Energy. I'm state leader on Veterans for Energy, and also the USGLC, which is the Global Leadership Coalition. And they represent the international affairs budget as it takes care of everything in the State Department and all our overseas programs. There are pro and con reasons to support the international affairs budget, because it's all the money we give to foreign governments included in that, as well as all the good things we do. So before I jumble everybody's mind up, Veterans for Energy, we're much in favor of approving and building the KXL pipeline, because along with that, exporting crude oil from the United States to our friends and trustworthy people overseas at a much lower rate than they can get it down. So I guess where I'm going with that is, if you care to comment on the KXL pipeline, which
Is that the Keystone Pipeline, or is that different?
Yes, yes, sir, sorry, but it is the same. The Canadians a week ago said, well, you know what, never mind trying to convince Obama, we don't want you to make a decision on that for another year now, which leads me to think somebody else is making them an offer to take this crude off the coast, maybe China or Russia or whoever, because the State Department has done 5 different investigations of the ecology and what effects Keystone would have on it. And they've all said to the president, there's no appreciable damage to the climate. His own State Department has said this. Yet, the Senate approved it, the House approved it, and of course, a majority of Democrats approved it. He still vetoed that bill. How can we get around this? Is there any way we're gonna be able to take advantage of these
If you,
riches we have in the ground?
yeah, well, as soon as the president changes, then I think you're in a position to come back and talk about the vital necessity and strategic opportunities that the Keystone Pipeline, the Canadian Alliance on energy, and the ability to export. Well, I support the export of American oil, particularly to our allies. It shores us up in a time when we're almost in a world war, really. It's just a low-grade war. And, you know, if we're able to pursue these kinds of power positions, instead of being enthralled to many of the Middle Eastern monarchies, then I think that we're in a better position to provide stability within the world. So that's.
What do you think might be the real, true underlying causes, Governor, or the real root causes that have caused this constant delay? No. There's got to be something there that's not being said. I think about that a lot, and I wonder if you had any thoughts on that.
I don't have a conspiracy theory, but my fear is that they just, you know, believe that the development of fossil fuels in the United States add global warming or the environment problems. And I think that that community is so powerful, part of the constituency of the Democratic Party, that they're influencing that policy. Well, I might, by the way, I just remembered something else that in response to Sam's question. They asked since Hillary was coming behind me, not the good Hillary, it was bad Hillary. Since Hillary Clinton was coming in behind me, they did ask me to comment on Hillary Clinton, which was really fun, because they asked me, you know, if she was here, what would you say, which was great. And what I did was, just for you, for the record, I said I would say 2 things. Number one, her position as on economics is flat wrong, and will continue to make the country poorer and in danger. And specifically, I said her position is very much like Bernie Sanders, who's very honest about it. This is a socialistic type of approach, and the result of that is going to create slow growth and even make it worse, and create lack of robustness in the American economy. And she's responsible for that, and she will double down on these bad policies. And the second thing I said, I'll remind you all that in April of this year, I announced that on the Luke Russert show, that as far as I was concerned, Hillary Clinton was disqualified from the race. That's great fun. The press, they're all waiting for her, right? So she's disqualified from the race. Disqualified from the race because she was Secretary of State, continued to operate the Clinton Foundation, where overseas interests were contributing tens of millions of dollars to the Clinton Foundation. And meanwhile, we don't know what interaction and communication was going on between these officials and countries and brothers-in-law or any of that kind of thing. We don't know, because she deleted her emails. So the point is that the next president has to be in a position to restore the American people's faith in their own government. Because the people have lost faith in their own government, and it's very corrosive. The next president has to be able to do that. She is not able to do that, period. And as a result, she is disqualified from the race. She has disqualified herself from the race. When she became the Secretary of State, she should have disassociated completely from the foundation, and she should turn over all her emails if people want to know. And then I made the point also, having deep experience with handling classified material, never mind whether it's stamped, you know, confidential or not. Our adversaries would love to know about her interactions with her friends, with her family, with her husband, with her government officials, with anybody. Think of the vast treasure of knowledge that the adversaries could get by reading tens of thousands of her emails, and there was no security on her emails. what are the chances that that an adversary's gotten it? Pretty high, I think. She'd be a target of that kind of cyber invasion.
Yeah, speaking of security, why don't you launch into your thoughts, strategy, approach in regard to cyber, because that's a major threat right now from a security perspective. So is there anything you want to add to that vein?
When we did the Gilmore Commission, we recognized that cyber was almost a commission of its own because it was emerging. And as you may know, John, I'm on the board of CACI International, CACI, which is a high service and information technology and cyber company, among other things that we do. It's a $3.5 billion company. But look, what's going on right now is, all I can tell you is that we need to develop the technologies to be protective, and then to be very diligent about the application of those kinds of protections. Because the real information I can respond, I feel like a psychology exam, I ought not be doing this, but cyber is emerging, and it's continuing to grow out right now, and the challenge we're facing with the international guerrilla attacks that we're facing, the international guerrilla war that is going on right now, is that ironically, medieval people are exploiting the vulnerabilities of a modern society. The easiest example is, you want to kill a whole bunch of people, incinerate a whole bunch of people, what do? They didn't set a bonfire. They hijacked an airplane, 2, 3, and they became a missile full of explosives. It's called jet fuel. And that's modern stuff. That's modern, it's a modern world, and barbaric medieval people hijacked the modern world. Well, cyber's like that. Cyber is that we Westerners are using cyber for communication, for knowledge, for productivity in the economy. That is part and parcel of the modern 21st century. And the ability to unhook it, to destroy it, to invade it, to disable it. What would we do today if these things wouldn't work anymore?
Governor, I think
Today.
we're kind of reached kind of the end of our time here, so maybe you can kind of give us a concluding statement.
Well, the concluding statement is this. We are in a serious, I believe, crisis. I see it as the continuing dissolution and change of the world after World War I. It's just continuing to evolve. Anti-colonialism, the dissolution of the state system. ISIS is exactly, never mind they're cutting off people's heads. They stand for the proposition that there should be no borders of states, nation states. Western civilization is based upon nation states with borders and laws and protections and constitutions and police officers and government and armies. We are based upon that notion of stability. The 21st century is evolving and changing, and things are dissolving, and the Middle East is dissolving. The danger is most acute because we're in a time of change and crisis. I believe that America is still the indispensable provider of stability in the world. We are the only people right now who have the wherewithal and the ability to provide stability. And that means that we have to do things to protect ourselves and to protect the world order. And that protection means that we have a duty to make sure that we have the strength, the ability, the solid military experience, and above all things, we have to assert affirmative leadership so that we don't end up with people misunderstanding the role we are prepared to play. Because if they misunderstand, we may end up in another war. And I'd like to avoid that. I'd like to avoid another major world war that might lead us down the path of real savagery. We can do this, but we are in a very dangerous time. And if we elect 1, 2, 3 more presidents that don't know what they're doing or don't have the will to do it, then I think the country is in very great danger. But I close by saying I'm optimistic because I understand our country. I understand what we are, the American character, and the ability to grow and to create and to get rich and to invest and to do exciting things and to stand by our principles and our liberties is built into the national character. Always has been. And we've always been this way. People who came to this country were people who came here because they had certain national characteristics. of interest in entrepreneurship and excitement and wanting to create something new for their families. And we went all the way across the country, all the way to a small group of friends, and I'm very grateful for you all being here. You know, I'm not gonna win this thing unless a lot more people in New Hampshire know who I am. You're leaders, everybody in the room's a leader. So I'm asking you, if you decide that I should be the president, to tell people this. I'm doing it as hard as I can. Sam was telling me about all that fun I was having going up and down, talking to those hundreds and hundreds of people. Not enough people know who I am. Once people know who I am, I'm confident I can win the New Hampshire primary. And I've got plenty of strategic things I can say. I won't take your time now, but I have to have friends willing to speak up. Everybody goes home, puts on TV and has a sandwich. I can't win this. I've got to have people who are willing to step out there and support my state chairman, Sam Cataldo, and support my state director, Ann Smith. And we've got to find ways to meet more people. Okay, so talk to people, but also tell us about opportunities that I might have to speak to larger numbers of New Hampshires about what I'm thinking. That's what you could do. Money would help, but I'm not asking for that.
No, you got a great message, no question about that.
Thank you, John.
Excellent.
Okay, thank you all
Thank
very
you.
much.
Crop TV.